Welcome to the Health and Wealth Power Hour, the podcast that provides you with the knowledge and insights you need to achieve physical, mental, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Carlton, a business consultant who's passionate about helping people achieve a more balanced and healthier life. Each week, we'll deep dive into topics related to health and wealth, including retirement income planning, innovative healthcare solutions, alternative funded health plans, and specific actions individuals and business owners can take to gain control of their finances, have access to affordable quality health care, and achieve peace of mind. We'll also be joined by innovative experts who will share their knowledge and insights on prevalent topics. So, whether you're looking to grow your wealth or improve your health, you've come to the right place. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and empowered. Let's get started. All righty, gang. It is time for another exciting episode of the Health and Wealth Power Hour. That's right. It is that time again. Harlan Pickett's your host. Great to be with you today. We have a very interesting topic today. Have you ever had to hire somebody? Have you ever had to fire somebody? Have you ever hired somebody and then knew pretty quickly that it just wasn't going to work out? Have you hired somebody and they just never showed up to begin with? Man, I tell you, I hear that just so often that people are rolling the dice when they hire someone and they're actually surprised if they show up for the first day. Wow. Yeah, that's a tough place to be. But finding that perfect fit, it's a pipe dream, right? There's just really no way to get that done effectively, especially in the healthcare space, especially for those positions like administrative that just wear on people. And man, there's just no one who likes to do that. And who in the world could ever fit in that position? And I hate doing it. And I know I wouldn't have anyone do it. But what if there was hope? What if there was someone that had broke the code, that had figured out a way to build your team and find a way to get that perfect fit virtually every single time? Would you be interested in hearing about that? I hope so, because that's what we're going to talk about today. That's right. Dr. Michael Neal is with us today, and he has broke the code. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Build My Team. He had to build his own team. He had to figure out how to do it. He saw the same challenges we do, but he took it another step. He said, how do the big guys, how do people like Disney do it and always seem to find the right candidate? Dr. Neal, welcome aboard the Health and Wealth Power Hour. We are super excited to have you with us.
Boy, that was quite the intro, Harlan. Super excited to be here as well.
Man, I'll tell you, when I read about what you had done and the challenges that I have faced in my career, and I have seen so many of my clients face as someone who provides benefits to companies, and seeing that churn that happens at some of those, right? We're constantly getting updates. Sorry, she's gone, he's in. She's out, he's in. He's out, she's in. Over and over. You really feel it from different ways, whether it is personal with our company or seeing it, and then hearing it, of course, in the industry. But the fact that you broke the code, you didn't just do it because you were ready to start a business doing it. You did it because you needed to fill positions in your own company. So talk a little bit about that before we get in depth and all the rest of it.
Oh yeah, I'm a practicing eye doctor, and this all started with our practice. My wife and I practiced together way back in about 2016. We took a look at why the heck are we having constant, perpetual, relentless problems with team members, and it all boiled down to one thing. And that's that we were hiring completely and utterly wrong. We were using a process. Everybody's got a process, but it was essentially designed to find candidates who would be great patients. They needed help. They needed to be fixed up. They needed to be given an opportunity. They need all those types of things. And you got to ask yourself, how many of those things that we were doing will find high performing folks? And the answer is virtually nothing. So we were getting the types of candidates that we were actively looking for unintentionally. We didn't know any better. So started to take a look at how other companies are doing it. I mean, we had our moment where our hands up were in the air. We cried uncle and said, we have to change this. So took a look at how Disney's doing it. Four Seasons, which is a phenomenal service organization, Ritz, Carlton, those types of companies. And what we found out, Harlan, is that the companies weren't hiring in a traditional way. They weren't looking for people that could do the job. They were essentially determining who was unable to do the job first, and the ones that were left, they would take a look at. They flipped the hiring pyramid essentially upside down.
Hmm.
And they were able to figure that out by using assessments to determine what people's natural strengths and talents are. So we started out trying to do that. We tried to buy them. We tried to do all kinds of things to get access to those types of tools. And what we found out is that specifically in the healthcare field, they didn't exist. They really didn't exist. So the other part of it, Harlan, is that when we had to develop them, so here we are all loaded for bear, that didn't do the trick at all, because we had to get a tremendous amount of candidates into, imagine a funnel. We developed an applicant, essentially a funnel, and it's now automated, where what we would do is write the job description. It got published out to over 20 different job boards. It would get as many candidates as possible. And then you say, well, what the heck am I going to do with all these people? Well, the automated system sent them a link within 5 seconds of them applying, and they ran through the assessment process, and most of them didn't make it. It's multi-layered. We test their speed of learning. There's a reason why. I'll get back to that. We test their natural strengths and talents. And at the end of it, our team does a video interview to make sure that the person that is going through the process and successful will properly represent the practice or the business. And this works in healthcare practices. It also works in all kinds of businesses that have clerical and administrative type roles. So that's essentially what we took this to. And at this point, it's completely automated. It will produce, especially for healthcare, people that we're 97% on average confident that the person can do the position before they're ever sent over to the practice or to the business to review the candidate. So it went from a disaster, an absolute nightmare, to studying the absolute top performers in the field and modeling how they do things, discovering a bunch of stuff the hard way, and we had to create what wasn't commercially available. So that's essentially what we've developed at this point.
So in this process, as you went through and you learned this, as you mentioned, what you're doing is you're actually, first thing, removing the ones who cannot do it.
Yeah.
Now, is this a general override? And we talked a little bit before we got started here that this is primarily administrative, okay, across many levels of administration, even management, but still administrative in general. Is that correct?
Yes, we don't do licensed positions. Like, we're not hiring doctors. We, let's say dental will hire all the team members except, let's say, the hygienists or the doctors. We're in over 10 different healthcare professions, so it's a bit of an exhaustive list. But I'll give you an example. A secretary in a healthcare practice, a medical practice, like let's say an eye care practice versus dental versus chiropractic versus general medicine, they're pretty much identical. A phone rings, somebody comes to your desk. They need to pay you. All of these types of things are identical across all of these different professions. And they're also either identical or extraordinarily close to identical in other professions as well. So if you need a secretary and executive assistant, those are roles that serve people, have a service component to them, etc., and all well within our wheelhouse.
Okay, so is there a differentiation though, say front office to back office? In other words,
Yeah.
you mentioned billing. the person in billing, especially in medical, they may never see another person. They may never talk to anyone except maybe another office or Medicare or something like that. In other words, they're not public facing per se.
Right.
Do you differentiate between that and the young lady that sits up front, or young man that sits up front and is public facing and is always doing and taking phone calls from clients? Is there a different process for that, or are those kind of all together?
Well, the process is the same, but the algorithm for who we're selecting is different.
Okay.
So imagine, I'll give you some similarities and some differences. The people in a practice that are patient facing, or in any business that are patient facing, for example, these aren't personality assessments or anything like that. That is a very elementary approach to doing this. What we're looking for are these people's natural strengths and talents. They wake up in the morning, they roll into a situation, they can do amazing things as long as it's within their natural strengths and talents. And so let's say a secretary at a busy medical practice. First of all, extremely high stress tolerance. You're going to have um, a couple people a day that are going to come in and be upset. It's unavoidable in a very busy medical practice. Nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your practice. They don't understand their insurance. Their insurance shafted them on something. I mean, this is your world. You know this better than anybody. Um, that's the main reason why they're upset. So you need a person who can do that, who can handle that type of stress. We measure stress tolerance. We measure things like, are they detail oriented? Do they follow process? Now imagine, Harlan, you bring yourself in a secretary in your practice who is inventive and creative in how they follow process. How's that going to work out for you? Especially in the insurance world, right? I mean, if the I is not dotted with the proper color pink ink, you're not going to get paid. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
we're looking for people who fit these relatively narrow algorithms and will perform predictably, reliably, and in an outstanding manner. Contrast that to, let's say, somebody in medical billing. Well, oh boy, a medical biller or any type of position like that. It's a combat position. They need to wear a helmet because they're going to fight every single day. I mean, they have more in common with somebody who jousts professionally or fences professionally than they do with a regular secretary. Because they have to go to war with these insurance companies. They have to be relentless. They have to follow process. They have to be incredibly detail oriented, high transactional counts on everything. This is not a person who is generally warm and fuzzy. Okay, so you've got two people who apply, let's say, for these positions, and one essentially couldn't be further from the other in so many different ways. However, simultaneously, they're incredibly similar. Both have high stress tolerance, both have to follow a process, etc. So what differentiates those two? Well, that's where the secret sauce comes in. And that's where we can determine through our strengths and talents, um, and how we, of each of these people, how they're going to perform in each of the roles.
And that is vital. And so I want to go back to your person that was creative. For a position at an office, that is not a terrible thing as long as they're in the right. Once again, they don't need to be in billing
Yeah.
and they don't need to be there, but there's a place called marketing. There's a there's
Right.
there's places in there where those creative juices, those things could fit within that. But so once again, what you're saying is that doesn't dismiss them. It means that maybe they're not necessarily, I won't say maybe, they're not a good fit for billing, but we can find a place for them at an office that's looking for XYZ versus this.
Right. And we do this all the time. And I'll use our practice as an example. Frank, he runs Build My Team, and he also runs our practice. He's not the practice manager, but it essentially oversees the operations of both. So he's in a unique position where he has to eat his own dog food for the companies. I mean, Build My Team staffs our practice with outstanding team members. And so you take this particular position or approach, I should say, and what we've noticed some things over the years where the the main issue is to get the person in the proverbial right seat on the bus. Okay, we all hear about getting them on the bus, all of that stuff. Well, get the right people on the bus. That's step one. Well, we do that inherently the way that we select. The next thing is to get them in the right seat on the bus. And in our practice, as I was saying, believe it or not, almost exactly 50% of the applicants don't end up getting the job they apply for. They're switched. So they come in incredibly confident that I want to be an X. And our strengths and talents approach says, no worky worky. So what we're going to do instead is approach them about being a Y. And what we found is that virtually nobody says no to that. They just applied for a job. When they're applying for the job, they're thinking, yeah, I could probably do that. And if you back up, administrative position, sitting in front of a computer, usually air conditioning, nice office. They're not holding a flag on a road crew. Nobody's going to run them over. You know what I mean? Like these are considerations going through these people's minds. And working in an office is a pretty darn terrific job for a lot of people. So with the build my team approach, we can find these essentially these superstars, these A players, if you will, put them into the proper role that matches their strengths and talents, and off they go. They start performing incredibly well.
How often do you get pushback, though? How often do you get someone that says, well, wait a second, you're saying I'm not a good fit for this? I've been doing this for 20 years, and now you're telling me that I'm not a good candidate for this job? You've lost your mind.
Oh, I love that question. That's fantastic. Here's why. Experience is a red flag in our model. Oh, it is. I can just time after time after time again. When we hire, our process is completely automated up until the last step. And the way our software, I'm describing this exactly. The way our software outputs is the person going to work in this position or not, is simply a thumbs up. That is as simple as it gets. We made this literally as simple as it gets. If they get a thumbs up, we are on average 97% certain they'll succeed in the position. We take it one step further and we do a video interview to determine if they would properly represent the practice, the business. Doesn't matter what they look like. None of it's all irrelevant. But how do they conduct themselves? How are they talking?
Yeah.
How are they, are they eloquent? Are they colloquial? Are they good grief, not letting them anywhere near people? That type of thing. So in that entire process, we have not looked at a resume until the very end. And the resume serves one purpose. Do they have experience or not? If they have experience, it's a red flag. So you bring up that point. Why is that a red flag? And what the heck, like, why wouldn't I want somebody with experience? Well, when they roll into, let's say, a healthcare practice, oh, we didn't do it that way at Dr. Jimmy Joe's office. We did it this way. Oh, okay, time out. All that tells me is I've got either a brontosaurus or a triceratops dinosaur walking into my office, almost certainly very unlikely to be excited about learning a new anything. And now I've got to undo. I've got to untrain. Now, Harlan, how many times have you successfully untrained somebody as an employee?
Yeah, that's a tough road to hoe right there.
It sure is. So flip that around. We measure, as part of our process, we measure how fast they learn. So you take a person who doesn't have experience, but we know can do the job. They learn incredibly quickly. We put them in a position where they're not only exceptionally trainable, and most people have a lot of hangups about this because they're so used to training people who don't work out, right? Why the heck would you want to continuously train somebody who's going to leave? And it's that in psychology, it's called learned helplessness. No matter what you do, you're still going to fail. And so with our approach, these people are imminently trainable. They learn super quickly. A couple weeks, they're up and running. And guess what, Arlen? You don't have to undo anything. And I can't state how important that is on one simple thing, practice management software or medical charts in a healthcare practice. The Triceratops, the Brontosaurus, they have an exceptionally hard time unlearning the software and then learning the new software. New person that we bring to the table, boom, they take to software like a duck to water. They learn it incredibly quickly. It is such a superior way to do things in healthcare and in a small business. As a business owner, I would never go back to the old way.
This is very much, obviously, I understand that you're talking about a very different way of doing this, but this is absolutely anti anything I've ever heard, and that is that you always want people with experience. Experience, experience, experience. I mean, that's what I'm sure that was probably some of the mistakes that you were making too in hiring people, because you even hear, "Oh, man, we stole a good one away from XYZ company. This guy, they couldn't do without him, and ha, 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 we got him now." And then you always hear that it comes to a bad ending, right? It always seems to come to a bad ending.
Harlan, why'd they leave? They were unhappy. Yeah, they're unhappy because, let's say, the practice owner was bad, treated them poorly, whatever. They're unhappy because they weren't making that 50 cents an hour extra. So congrats, you got them. You just hired a mercenary. The moment they can get $50 an hour or 50 cents an hour more out of somebody else, off they go. You hired yourself a glorified temporary person in the position. And in the meantime, you're going to put thousands of dollars into them. So the no experience doesn't work for licensed positions. That's obvious.
Yeah.
This works exceptionally well for unlicensed clinical, clerical, administrative positions within healthcare practices or any type of similar business. We have that absolutely dialed. However, it requires that the business owner agrees with how we're approaching these things. And when this was all developed, this approach, we weren't coming at this as seasoned HR professionals with 30 years under each of our belts. No. We didn't have any, experience or baggage that we're bringing to the table with regards to that. So we looked at this from essentially what's the best way to do it without regards to time, money, or the way that things have been done in the past. And found out that those other guys, like the Four Seasons, the rest of them, that's how they're doing it. So what this does exceptionally well is it finds the right needle in a stack of needles.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Mhm.
That's a very interesting way to put it. So how long did you use this, I guess, for your own practice before you decided that it was also a good business model? It was also a good secondary business, sharing your experience, because obviously the first client was you.
Yep. And then this all started before it was completely automated with me texting, if you can believe this, texting candidates from a cell phone. Unfortunately, mine. And that in a hurry, like, oh boy, we can't do this. This is ridiculous. But just as a tip for your listeners, like the people want to hire via email, and we did too. Why would we want to use texting? There's a cost associated with texting. Email's free. It's a terrible idea. Well, one afternoon, I shouldn't say afternoon, it was all day. My assistant was all day correcting candidates, educating candidates, I should say, on how to check their spam. All day. And you ask these candidates to these healthcare practices, because that's all we did at that point, how often do you check your email? Guess what their answer was, Harlan? Every day. All the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Every day,
Yeah.
all the time, some variation of that. On average, it was 3 times a week. That's what it came down to. They didn't know how to use this. Like, they just were the answer. And this is demonstrable of so many things in hiring. We were told the answer that we were expecting to hear. They told us what we wanted to hear. That's it in a nutshell. We pulled the plug on our email system at great cost, expense, and both time and money, developed a text-based system. So now when a candidate applies, they get a response 24 hours a day within 5 seconds. Their cell phone bings within 5 seconds. So our clients have a massive advantage because they're actually hiring at 3 a.m. It's crazy. These guys get the text, they go through the assessment process. If they don't pass the various different levels, they exit the assessment process. And then at the end of that, as I said, we know if they can do the job or not. We send them the video interview, we determine the rest, and then they're sent over to the clients to pick. Our clients can go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and not make a bad decision. And this is now automated to the point where the entire time length, including the free initial consultation call, is can be an hour and a half. That's how long it takes to hire somebody through our model.
Oh my God.
End to end.
That's not even fathomable. I can't even. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good time to pivot to it's unbelievably inexpensive as well. People think it costs a lot. It most certainly doesn't. But you think in terms of a small business owner and how completely and utterly unequipped a person is to deal with this situation. Not only not knowing how to do it per se, but you write a job ad, you post it on a job board, you're paying a ton of money per month for the job board, you're not getting many applicants. What do? Pay more money. Doesn't solve your problem. You're getting hardly any applicants. We've been able to do this with a level of expertise that gets these great results. They're great. They're predictable. And the most important thing, there's two important things for me on the practice owner side. One, my stress levels plummeted. If somebody resigns for whatever reason, and that does happen, I mean, positions in healthcare are always transient. Administrative and clerical positions of any type have a level of transiency to them. What we think about is how can we improve on that person? So what do we like about them? What do we not like about them? And then that information is fed back to our Build My Team representative, and the algorithm for our particular practice, because it's customized to the practice, gets tweaked. It just gets better and better. And in the meantime, we sit back and wait for the candidates. Contrast that to the approach that you're using as a business owner right now, where you're me in 2016.
Yeah. So in essence, if you have a client that is been a client for a while, let's say that you've been helping them for 2 or 3 years, as you mentioned, it's not if someone's going to leave, it's when they're going to leave. It's just like part of what's going to happen, no matter how good a practice it is, no matter how good things are. Someone has a baby and they decide they want to stay home for a couple of years before they come back to work. Well, you're not really going to leave the position wide open for that long, right? So now you're back at the hiring phase again. So what you're telling me though is before we hire someone to replace Nancy Sue here, then we're going to talk about, well, what did you like about Nancy Sue and what did you dislike? If you can make little tweaks about filling this position again, what would that look like? Then you're going to go through that search again, right? You're going to update the position as it were.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in a practice or a small business, folks, everybody takes it very seriously personally when somebody leaves. What if their spouse got transferred? What if they have an elderly parent that needs care? What if something happened, God forbid, something happens to their kids? These are generally secondary income positions for a lot of people. Of course, there are exceptions to that. Practice manager, that type of thing, different story. But no matter what you do, that's going to happen. So with our approach with Build My Team it's baked into the model. We expect that. And all our clients have to do is send an email, a text, phone call, smoke signal, whatever. We had a retinal specialist. I need a heartbeat. That was his quote. That was his text. Sunday night, I need a heartbeat. Yeah, honestly. I got that.
That's great.
Myself. But that's the end of it. You send that information over, you have that discussion with the tweaks you want to make. There are, of course, a couple questions along the lines of logistics, like what location, what are the hours, A lot of it for the new clients, a lot of it is slimming down the role. So they want somebody who can be a world-class expert at 10 different things. Well, that doesn't happen. So it's narrowed down to what's incredibly achievable. A primary, secondary set of strengths and talents, and then of course a couple other things that they're going to do for the role. So by doing all that, you're essentially ordering a person, and our software will find the right person, get them over to you with virtually no work on your side. That's the whole point. So you can go back to being whatever you are, the best business owner, the best customer satisfier, the best doctor, whatever it might be.
So have you seen a transition? I would guess the answer is yes, but I don't know what y'all all you hire for. Have you seen a transition where people are hiring these positions anywhere in the country, that they're doing them remotely, that they, especially for some of the maybe even billing or some positions, that they don't need one in a brick and mortar? In other words, they're saying, "Hey, I just want the best candidate. I'm here. I'm in Texas. I don't care if they live in Kalamazoo, Washington. I just want the best candidate." Are you seeing some of that?
Yes, generally outside of healthcare. Healthcare is almost always an in-person position with a couple exceptions. So our biller works remotely in our practice, but she sure as heck didn't start like that. I mean, this is a person who showed up for work every day. We trust her. She earned that trust. So we're not dealing with a random applicant that you're going to give the entire financial success of your practice to from Kalamazoo or wherever they claim to be from. It's not like that. These are folks who have showed up in person. Can it be like that? Absolutely. However, we focus on people who can physically show up in the office, and that's what makes it special. Are these folks coming from the Philippines or whatever offshore countries? No, not at all. These are folks who are going to show up in person. And what we found in healthcare, especially, and in so many small businesses, you hire those offshore folks, the remote workers, when you have to. Have to meaning a gun to your head. You don't have another option. These are, especially healthcare, you want somebody that grandma and grandpa can come up and talk to, because that's what they want. A virtual secretary, terrific idea on paper in a lot of ways, complete bomb in the real world, because you're not dealing a person to a person. And small businesses especially excel at customer service. Okay. This isn't Amazon. Amazon excels at getting me stuff tomorrow, or in the cities, it gets me stuff today. But how's their customer service? Right. So, so our approach is to maximize that customer service, the amazing interactions with great people and your customers.
That's interesting, because it does seem like the one place that there hasn't been a huge push towards remote is healthcare, without a doubt. There is certainly some positions that have, but yeah, if you're going to go to the dentist, you can't do that virtually. If you're going to go, the interaction, right? It's there at the dentist, at the optometrist, at the doctor's office. There's always going to be the call for those people, the need for the people in that office. Now, one of the other things that seems to be an issue in many offices, and that it's probably simply because of some of the things that you brought attention to, and that is there the changes in software, the changes in the way that things are being administrated, whatever. We brought in a uh, new system for this, new system for that, and the experience is not there, right? The experience, they might have had a lot of experience, but not with this.
Right.
And there seems to be a very big bogging down of the admin. Uh, uh, our healthcare system in 2023, we spent $4.8 trillion on healthcare across the whole spectrum, and 25% of that was administrative. Well, that's not efficient. Of course, so thinking that there seems to be a real problem with efficiency in administrative. And what you're saying is this process helps to take that and make it a lot more efficient, right? It addresses that particular issue because we're not bringing, as the old saying goes, we're not bringing in square pegs to put into round holes. And you can do that, by the way. There is actually a way to put a square peg in a round hole. It involves a hammer, and it's
A huge
messy.
one.
Yeah, and it's very messy, but it's certainly possible. But back to the point of it's not very effective at the end of the
Well,
day.
so I can give you a specific example. And I was on a podcast where several of the listeners didn't believe me. They reached out to the host and he called me on it. And I said, offline, let's do a Zoom and I'll show you tax returns. And I did. Our practice went from 14 full-time equivalent employees down to 10 and a half. So essentially a one part-time. We went up approximately 50% in gross revenue, and the net almost tripled. And that was in about a 2.5 year period, adjusted for the time. How is that possible? Well, that brings up the whole different discussion of A players, B players, and C players. That's what the way that this occurred. What we had on our team at the start were a whole bunch of C players. Oh God, even D players. I mean, we had one person who was amazing, and we did everything we could to keep her happy, and she stayed. What we found out, and this, Build My Team sees this all over the country, all kinds of businesses with, I haven't seen an exception yet. A players they're outstanding. They only want to work with A players. A players will tolerate B players, and they will quit their job and find another one that day if you're surrounding them with C players. They can't stand. They're not going to carry those people. They want, and they can find another job because they don't think in terms of, I can't get a job. They're thinking in terms of, I don't want this job. I'm going to start returning the calls that I get constantly. So in our practice at the time, yeah, we had C and D players. We didn't know about this concept. And over the course of those 2.5, well, closer to 2 years, the D players gone, the C players were replaced, and now we have A and B players, mostly A. That's not only sustainable, but it gets you results that are incredible. So going back to the bus analogy, you got to get the right people on the bus. That's what all the management experts say. Yes, they're right. It's super easy to say. How the hell do you do it? Well, we cracked that code. So we're getting the right people on the bus. Then we take a look at each of the roles and the natural strengths and talents of the team, and you can move them. If they're a better fit for another role, you just move the person internally. For the roles where for the people that you have with no great roles for them, they have to exit your practice or your business. It's not about them being a bad person. You just don't have an opening that they're going to be great at. So by helping them find a new position that they're outstanding with, or at, I should say, you're doing them an enormous favor. You're releasing them. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that when you let people go, it's remarkably often that it's a huge relief for the person. You're terrified of it. You don't want to have that discussion about firing them. Oh my God, it's the worst thing ever. You put it off, costs you a ton of money. But they're relieved because they were doing everything they could to please you, to make you happy, but they just weren't good enough in that particular role. So they're now off to a position where they can be better at something. They can be great at it, but it's just not within your organization.
And I think that's one of the problems people have. It's not one, it's a big problem that most businesses have because just the D players, we're not gonna talk about the D players, that's a different thing. But those C players, a lot of times are really good people.
They are. Yep.
They're really good people,
Mhm.
but that doesn't make them a good fit for the job that they're doing. It doesn't even mean they're a bad employee. They may come to work every single day and spend 50% of their time completely ineffective.
This happened to us. An extraordinarily specific case study that spun my head around. We had a person at our front desk who gave away everything, would do anything for the patient, but it was always patient first. I mean, it was one disaster after another. We almost asked her to leave, but what we did instead was took a look at, this is a very special person. Maybe it's an us thing. And in fact, it was. We were putting her in a role where her strengths and talents were backwards to the role. We created a patient coordinator position for her where she was in charge of, is in charge of scheduling all of our patients' surgeries, referrals, third-party consults, you name it. And she is perfect at the role. She's unbelievable at the role. I wouldn't change a thing. And the patients love her. And most importantly, for us in the healthcare side of things, is they all show up for the surgeries, almost without exception, at an incredible rate, right?
Yeah.
So she's incredibly successful. But that was an internal move. We moved her from one seat on the bus to another seat on the bus, and now she's fantastic. Look, most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time you need to bring in new talent. And what I learned as part of all these lessons, essentially, my role on the ownership side is to not do. And this is very odd for doctors, and business owners especially. It's not to do, it's to essentially create the most accurate, detailed map that I possibly can for where that bus needs to go. And then I create guardrails to put on the road. I've got the right people on the bus. I got them in the right seats on the bus. I've got an incredibly strong leader, aka driver for the bus. Guess what my job is? Get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And let them drive the bus. And what they showed me is that they're going to drive that bus and they're going to grow the business and do wonders for the business in ways I didn't even think were possible. I just had to be, my only wisdom in that is to get the heck out of the way.
So in the case of your front desk person, what you had is an A performer in a C performing job because you had her in the wrong place, right? So where she's at now, she's an A, but she was a C to the point almost where you were ready to say goodbye to her. But that brings up another question then. What if you're in a practice? We're gonna stay in the medical field because that's obviously where you have the most experience, personal experience as well.
Yeah.
What if there's inefficiencies in your practice? You know there are, but you just can't put your finger on all the places where there are inefficiencies. Is there a way, is this anything that y'all do to assess a business and the folks that already work there to help understand where they may be a better fit at the practice itself instead of bringing in new employees? Maybe you find out that someone's not a fit at all, but is there a way that you help businesses really find out where the people that they already have are good fits at?
Yeah, absolutely. We run them through the same process an applicant would. And there's a model for that, a pricing model for that. What we find out is that a lot of people need to exit the team in those scenarios. And the people that are fantastic are a lot of times who the owner thinks, but sometimes they're not even aware of the strengths and talents that they're sitting on. So it becomes a eyes wide open learning experience for the business owners. So that is something that works incredibly well, but you need a pretty confident business owner, and you also need somebody who's going to take action on it. Because once you're sitting on that information, it's tough to not take action on.
Well, that's the other problem, right? Now that I know, I can't unknow. And so I don't believe, personally, I don't believe that as a business owner, you would want to go through this process unless whatever the results are, you're going to take action. You're ready to take action. In other words, the inefficiencies or whatever's going on in your practice, if you're not ready to take action, you probably don't want to do this because once you know, you just can't let it lie.
And a lot of times our clients, they will stick their toe in the water. For example, we have two ways that we work with clients. One is what we call a one-time hire, and the other is our membership, where the practice doesn't want, like, they want us to do all of their candidate sourcing for them. And so the folks that are used to our process, have experience, have used it, the process, and are believe the candidates that come in, like, they are so predictable. It's just incredibly predictable by design. So once they have that level of understanding, they want nothing to do with hiring, and they can take a look at their performers, and yet we'll hire somebody, we'll bring them in, we'll get them up and running, and then the person, um, once it's all done, they let the person go. The underperformer go. And that's what happened in our practice. It was I thought it would be terrifying. However, it's incredibly exciting. And what you see as a business owner, stress plummets, not only from the ownership side of things, but the team too, because those A players, they are pulling their hair out that they got to do all the work for the C player. This is just, messing around half of the day, doing virtually nothing half of a day, or whatever it might be, right? So you replace that person with somebody who's going to actually do the work, do a great job of it. And now that A player, fantastic. They're so excited. So to get back to your point of the inefficiencies, how do you isolate those inefficiencies? Well, first of all, as I said, getting the right team members on is a huge part. But there's so many things in a business that the owner isn't aware of, right? Like a million things the owner just has no clue about. So in that particular situation, you know who knows? You know who knows where all the coins in the couch are? Everything else? It's your A players.
Yeah.
These are folks who have it all figured out. They understand the nooks and crannies of, especially if their position, let alone other positions, in ways that the owner never will, because the owner is not doing all of those roles. And so I didn't believe that our team could be as good as it is at, let's say, cost savings. Okay. As a business owner, you're not going to sweat bullets about stuff that's going to cost a couple of bucks here, a couple of bucks here, there. And as you have more of a successful business, it's not a couple of bucks anymore, right? Well, your team members, these are folks who are going to turn over all the rocks, all the couch cushions, get all the change out that they possibly can. And we took it one step further in our practice. We, our operations manager that I had told you about, he brought in profit sharing. So our profit sharing is set up in a way, without getting into specifics, but it's set up in a way that I, I require goal alignment as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. And what I mean by that is my team has to have an identical goal, as close as humanly possible to what my goal is. If their goal and my goal are virtually identical, I can't tell you the problems that solves. That is one of the top three things um, that I look for in a business is the goal alignment. If your Because incentives drive all behavior, right? So if your team has a goal that is, let's say, 50% off of yours, how much time, Harlan, do you think you're going to spend on an average day herding cats, spoon feeding, that type of thing? So you get those A players, you get them on so that their goal is the same as your goal, and just get out of the way.
Yeah, you're right on the money there, Mike, because if you have to keep reminding people what we're doing, what the direction we're all supposed to be swimming, if you have to keep reminding people of that, man, that's just beating your head against the wall, right? I mean, that's wow, how much time have I got to waste? Why are you asking me why we're doing this? We're doing this for the same reason we're doing this every single day, folks, right?
Yeah.
And if I have to keep reminding you while we're doing this, then you're right. I've made a huge mistake as the owner.
Right. And there's a whole concept. Will it make the boat go faster? Have you ever heard of this before?
Say it again.
Will it make the boat go faster? Have you ever heard of that before?
I don't think I've heard it phrased quite that way.
So in uh, it was about a British rowing team that ended up going from like essentially dead last to winning I believe it was the gold medal in the Olympics. And they did so in a couple of years. One goal. Will it make the boat go faster? Every single thing that the team did, the extended team, the support people, everybody, one singular goal. Will it make the boat go faster? And they ended up, it's a fascinating read. They ended up doing the impossible, went from unknown, essentially terrible, to winning the gold medal. And again, in a very short period of time. So it was one of the best, most cohesive teams for an extraordinarily specific goal ever built. And it just shows the power of goal alignment. They all had an identical goal, completely and utterly identical. So you apply that to healthcare or small businesses. I mean, it's tough to get everybody identical, but when you get them so that they're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, people aren't facing each other. They're facing the way they need to go. And they're not dealing with this one's got like one oar, the other one doesn't have any oars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is all set up. That's what happens is you get these incredibly high performing teams. It's no longer an impossible job. It's no longer something that you have to do yourself. Outsource it to build my team. That's the only thing that we do as a company.
Okay, so let's talk about successes then. Let's talk about some successes. Obviously, you guys were successful in doing this. You were successful enough that you started a business doing this as well.
Right.
And you mentioned a few times here now that A team members want to be. A's want to be with A's, right? They certainly don't want to be drugged down by others. With your own practice and with those that you have served, have you seen an increase in the harmony of the organization as well, as you don't have some of that maybe infighting that you had or bad attitudes because people are I sure wish you would get rid of old Bob, man. That dude is constantly paddling with one oar, just going around in circles, dragging us all down, right? Have you seen some of that, heard stories? And once again, even at your own practice, seen a happier workplace because it's more cohesive?
Yeah. Bob's not paddling in circles. Bob's smacking other people in the boat with his oar all day long. So Bob's got to go. And until Bob goes, you're not going to have anybody else in the boat who's rowing at all because they don't want to be whacked in the head with an oar. And it's such a ridiculous situation, but this happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
When you have those A players and the B players, you simply don't have a gazillion problems that you do with the C and D players. So a business owner trying to improve a C player, trying to make them better at their role. Okay, you are pushing rope up a hill. You are spoon feeding. You're herding cats. You're a kindergarten teacher. Pick your analogy. It's not going to work because this person gets out of bed and is an incredibly round peg for an incredibly square hole, and you don't have a big enough hammer. So instead of trying to get yourself a bigger hammer, which I used to do, instead turn around and say, we need a different person. You can't lean your ladder up against the wrong wall and climb it as fast as you can and expect to get to the right spot. It doesn't work. So if you want a completely cohesive team that's just gelling, the most incredibly accurate, best way to do that, it's to simply get rid of the folks that are causing the problems. And I don't know why people don't do that more. I think a large part of it, like with our client base, a large part of it is, well, they're the devil I know.
Yeah.
What if I can't hire somebody? What if I can't? Well, what we have is talent certainty. We're certain you're going to be able to replace that person with somebody better in a short period of time because that's all we do. And so you don't have to be held hostage by these folks who, oh, well, they're bad, but I know they're bad and we can work around them. Doesn't work that way. All you're doing by keeping them is you're repelling. You are actively repelling outstanding talent.
Yeah, but I want you to think about what uh, your retina doctor said. I need a heartbeat, right? Think of how many people hire based on that. It's a simple job. All you're doing is answering the phone, writing down what they want, calling people back. It's a simple, simple job. But to your point earlier, it may sound simple to you, but if you don't hire the right person and they absolutely hate talking on the phone and they have terrible handwriting and they don't have very good computer skills, well, what did you just do?
Yeah.
They're a heartbeat. Isn't that what you asked for? Well, unfortunately, you got it.
We, uh, it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
Again, everything is simple to the business owner because they've done it all before in so many different ways, right? So why can't somebody just read my mind, B, do exactly what I want them to do all the time, and C, do it in the same amount of time that it takes me to do it and not cause any problems? Okay, well, that doesn't happen in reality. What we need to do is communicate what the job is, and that's where the discussion with our team members comes in. The first discussion. Here's exactly what we want the person to do, and that usually takes 20, 30 minutes. Here's where they're going to show up for work. Here are their hours, all that stuff. Then once that's communicated, loaded up in our software, off we go. We'll find the people, but you can't just hire random folks and expect them to be able to do those jobs. And that's, no, I'm not minimizing this, but when you're interviewing people, when you are writing a job description, putting it up, you're going to get a couple of applicants, you get desperate, right? Like, Harlan, I'm desperate. I got to fill this position. She's leaving in 6 days. Or worse yet, she left that afternoon or he, right? So you're desperate. Now what happens when a business owner makes desperate decisions?
And I think we see it all the time, right?
Right? I used to do that because I had no alternative. This is the alternative. Instead of the desperation, like as soon as you have a sniff test that somebody's leaving, give us a call. We'll get rolling on this so that you're prepared. You have to protect the business first. It's your job. And by doing that, you get these people who are on their way out. You're not caught with with your proverbial pants down. There's all kinds of ways to do that. And that's what our team specializes in.
So what's the sweet spot number wise? So what size practice or what size business is the best fit for this?
We have practices with over 10 doctors, which means usually in the realm of 50, 70 employees, depending on the practice and the type of healthcare. Usually it's folks without a formal HR team. And why do I say that? Well, the HR folks, they don't generally hire this way.
Right. No.
They're bringing people in. They look into resumes all day long. They're bringing people in for interviews. Now, a lot of them have a skill set to be better at interviews. But when you looked at a resume last, did it tell you? Well, what did it tell you about how good a person was at a role? What information did it say about their natural strengths and talents?
No, doesn't say anything about that, right?
Exactly.
It's just
It's work history. Yep, it's work history. That's it. So that approach will only get you a certain level of results because you have to sit across from a person and using your tinfoil hat and the big antennas, you have to determine what's going through their mind, uh, discern the difference between them telling you what you want to hear and actually what they're good at, that type of thing. I mean, it's just darn near impossible. That's why on average, about half of hires don't work out. You're flipping a coin. our percentage is vastly higher than that. I mean, our people that we bring to the table, they like to show up for work. They think this is great. They just got a vast improvement in their daily life. You know what I mean? So, um, I'm obviously biased towards this approach, but I cannot imagine going back to essentially, I mean, it's like hunting in the dark versus in sunlight. You just don't have the ability to do the same thing and get those same results.
Now, I really love the analogy you put earlier. It's not finding a needle in the haystack, it's finding a needle in a pile of needles because now you've already got rid of the haystack, right? That's already took itself out. That
Mhm.
was part of the process where whenever uh, they went through, we just have to find the right needle for your particular position, for your company, for that role
Right.
that you have for them. Well, that's awesome. All right. So what is the process? Someone wants to just learn more. Someone, you know what? I got a position. Maybe I want to try it out and then see, or maybe I just want to talk to you about this and see if
Mhm.
it's a good fit for my company. I know they can go out to buildmyteam.com. That's buildmyteam.com. Is that the best place for someone to go, Mike?
Yep. They schedule a consultation and have a discussion. This is not something that is successful via email, back and forth via endless emails. You hop on a call. The more honest that the person on the other end of that phone is with our team, the more we can help. And I will flat out admit our team is making absolutely certain that when you want to work with us, that we can actually deliver what we say. That's why we're so successful with this. If your practice is an absolute disaster, if it's not going to work at all, well, we're going to give you as many tips as we can, um, but we may not work with you. So that's one of the reasons why our clients are so incredibly successful, because it's a great fit. These are folks who want us to do what we're outstanding at and will reply quickly. I mean, I'll give you an example. The one requirement we have for clients is that they reply within 48 hours. Everything requires 48 hours response. Why? Because those eight players, they're long gone if you don't.
Yeah.
And in our practice, you apply, you go through the process. Our practice manager will have an email from Build My Team, and they act on it within an hour or two. It's top priority. So get that in the morning. They're inviting that person in for an in-person discussion that afternoon. We do not wait because those eight players are gone.
Yeah.
They're getting offers all the time. Um, the hire slow, fire fast, doesn't work. Hire fast, but thoroughly, and fire fast as well.
So this process, I mean, if someone when I say this process, so this process for you guys, y'all also know that the person you're talking to is probably going through a more traditional process
Everybody
with
is, yep.
someone else too, right? You know this is going on. Have you had opportunities? I actually was just about done. You just brought me up something here. Have you had opportunities where you've kind of, I won't say stolen away, but be able to convince someone it's a better fit because of your process of going to where you're recommending than to another job they've been offered?
Yeah, it happens all the time. We have a person on our team who's what we call our applicant farmer. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek job title, but she works with the applicants to run them through the entire process and essentially help them grow into a successful candidate. So that happens all the time where they're applying for one thing, and um, um, we can make suggestions behind the scenes as well. Or here's another thing. In a area where we have multiple clients in a smaller geography, let's say there's a dental practice, an eye practice, a chiropractic practice, or whatever it might be. The If they're not a success for one of those, we might suggest they apply at another practice, or another business, that type of thing. So, an A player is an extremely valuable person, extremely so. And if that person's strengths and talents aren't needed by one of our clients, we might recommend them to another.
Yeah. Very, very good. So they could have applied or been thinking, I want to go work at the chiropractic office, but the actual position that would work best for them happened to be the dental office.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often, but that's what we do. Yeah, our goal is to fill those positions with A players. And it's not taking one from a practice and moving him to another. It's that that person isn't needed by one client. We might switch them to another.
Yeah.
But we do not, it does everybody a disservice where that A player doesn't get a terrific position. That's the disservice that's unacceptable.
Right. And to
They,
be clear, you're not stealing one from one place and putting them in another. Oh, hey, I'm sorry, Sue. We got you a job over here at the chiropractor last week. We actually want you to go over here to this other place.
that's never happened once. No, not at all.
Yeah. 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 But I didn't want people to think that I was implying that or that you were either. I was pretty sure we made that clear, but I just wanted to
Yeah,
make it
well,
100% clear.
imagine one client gets three fantastic A players sent to them. They can only hire one. What are we going to do with the other two? Well, we're going to work to see if we can find them positions because those are outstanding people. And that special needle in the stack of needles, you don't have a ton of those around. And that's why our process is so successful, because we're able to find those folks. So they are a very valuable person.
So one more question, and then I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy. Is there places where this doesn't work because there's just not enough of a talent pool? I mean, and what I mean is obviously
Yeah.
there's practices in rural areas as well, right? There's practices in places where there's just not necessarily a lot of people. You got to be somewhere where
Right.
where there's enough people, where there's enough needles, right? There can be a whole lot of hay, but there may not be a whole lot of needles in places. Have you run into situations like that to where it may take a little bit longer because of the lack of needles?
Yeah, it's not that we can't fill the position. It just sometimes takes a little longer. And remember, this was all created in Hawley, Pennsylvania, which doesn't have a talent pool. We have a talent puddle. And it used to be 6 inches deep, and now we're floating around 3. Okay. So you got to ask yourself, is my business in a 3-inch puddle area, or is it in a lot more than that? And the answer is virtually everybody is in an area where there's a lot of people or more applicants. But remember, we're not looking for people with experience, right? So
Right.
our applicant pool is not what you think it is. It's everybody that we can pour into the top of that funnel to determine if they're that special needle and they have those strengths and talents. So if you're looking for somebody with experience, you might have 2 people apply. You might have 3 people apply. For a secretarial position, we're going to have a couple hundred. It's a
Yeah.
completely different approach. So we very rarely get into a position where we don't have enough applicants. And that's because our entire funnel is designed to pour as many into the top as possible.
Very, very cool. Man, I have really enjoyed hearing about this, Mike. This is very different and I believe very revolutionary.
Thank you.
Because while you do see this, as you mentioned, you've got some of the big players, giant corporations use something very similar. The mom and pops just don't traditionally have the funds or wherewithal or the knowledge to be able to go through that process. Once again, like your buddy, the retina doctor, we're just looking for a heartbeat. And
Yep.
unfortunately, it doesn't work out about probably 8.5 out of 9 out of 10 times. So
Yeah. That particular example, we got him a person. That was Sunday. We got him a person Wednesday, showed up for work Thursday. She's with him for 5 years, a little over 5 years. It doesn't happen that fast, almost ever, right? We all know that. But that's what that outcome was. So from the most incredibly ridiculous start to something that was wildly successful, all in the span of about 4 days, 5 days. Yeah. Yeah, it was nuts.
awesome. Awesome. What a great case study that is. But yeah, I really do appreciate you being on, Mike. I think this is super
Thanks, Harlan.
valuable information. Folks, buildmyteam.com. That's buildmyteam.com. Mike, man, I wish you all the success in the future. If you ever need someone to talk to you about the crazy world of healthcare for employers,
You bet.
yeah,
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Harlan. I certainly enjoyed our conversation.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Don't forget, reach out to Mike and his team. Little play on words there. If you need help in the hiring process for admin. Appreciate you being with us. We'll catch you next time on the Health and Wealth Power Hour. We are out of here.